There truly isn't anything like video games. Video games immerse you into breathtaking worlds, tell amazing stories, and bring you some of the best music in history, all while allowing you to control and interact with them in ways you couldn't do with books or movies. They give you this sense of freedom, immersion, and investment you just can't get with any other medium of entertainment. Classics like The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, Final Fantasy, God of War, Shadow of the Colossus, the main menu in Black Ops 1 where you could break out of the chair by mashing the triggers and then go to a computer and play fucking Zork on some 1960s Cold War era computer. Video games are peak entertainment. However, this is an anime channel. We watch anime here, and with both video games and anime reaching levels of popularity the human mind simply can't comprehend, it'd be inevitable that the two mediums would cross over and we blessed humans would get video game anime adaptations. We now have great anime or anime-inspired adaptations of Cyberpunk 2077 with Edge Runners, Castlevania on Netflix, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and let's not forget that even the cesspool of toxicity and human filth that is League of Legends has arguably the greatest anime adaptation of all time with Arcane. It's not anime, but it's animated, who cares? Video game fans are feasting right now with some of the best quality animated shows you can find, but I'm not here for quality. I'm here for that 5-day-old McDouble you threw in the fridge for later and completely forgot about, and the fridge doesn't work well, so it's not that cold, so this McDouble has been festering in its own MSG-enriched essence in the back of a room-temperature refrigerator, and I'm not going to warm it up before I eat it. I'm just going to go in raw, and I'm going to gobble it up in one bite and probably die of food poisoning because it's McDonald's, so technically it'll never get old. In this video, I will watch 4 of the worst and most hated video game-based anime adaptations of all time, and see for myself whether these anime live up to their video game predecessors, or see the game over screen more than me during a Bloodborne playthrough. Before we get into today's video, I just want to remind you to hit the like button, subscribe to the main channel, and comment down below what anime or anime-related topics you want to see me cover. We also have a video game-related channel called Romcom Plays, where there will be playthroughs of games, reactions to game trailers, and much more. So make sure to subscribe there as well if gaming is your cup of tea. If you want even more content or just want to chat with me and others about anything and everything, make sure to join the Discord and follow me on all socials. The links are all down in the description below. Now let's get back to the video. Persona 5 is one of the greatest JRPGs and one of the greatest video games ever created. It's the only Persona I really played through and has one of my favorite premises, cast of characters, and soundtracks of all time. I've even met Ryuji's voice actor, however I met him for his work as Red 13 in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that's a different story. Needless to say, I'm pretty well educated on Persona 5, so an anime adaptation would be right up my alley. I mean, obviously with the art style and presentation of the game, it'd be a no-brainer that an anime would and should be made for it. It's the perfect game to get in anime. So it absolutely doesn't surprise me that the anime is ass. Released in 2018 and animated by Studio Cloverworks, Persona 5 the animation pretty much follows the exact story of its gaming counterpart, following our main character Joker and the gang on their journey to becoming the Phantom Thieves and fighting the good fight against pieces of shit akin to our boys Aubrey Graham and R. Kelly, if you know, you know. So you would think the story would be its biggest strong suit, but that's not the case. The 100+ hour story you follow in the game is condensed to a 26-episode series, and it's inevitable that when cramming so much narrative into such a small slot that you're not going to be able to fit it all in. The pacing of the story comes off as super rushed. I watched the entire Kamoshida arc in about 2 or 3 episodes when in-game I spent almost 10 hours in that segment. Maybe that's just showing how slow I play RPGs, but even so, forcing that much story into maybe 40 to 60 minutes really comes off as jarring to someone who has played the game before. To anime-only viewers, it may not seem that bad, but to me it was quite noticeable, not to mention that subjects and themes were outright censored or changed. The biggest example being in the Kamoshida arc itself. In the game, Kamoshida is the abusive pervert gym teacher who physically torments his students and gets a little too freaky for the Diki with female student named Shiho. This incident leads Shiho to attempt to end her own life, and it really sets the tone for how dark and serious this game and journey can get. In the anime, they essentially leave out the implied essay of Shiho and only focus on the physical abuse Kamoshida dishes out to her and other students. Yes, his perverted thoughts of An are still showcased, but it definitely feels tame compared to the source material. I can understand why they may have had to censor it since the show was airing on television, but it doesn't change how untrue to the game it is, even if I think essay in anime and media as a whole needs to be used less. Now, anime-only watchers may not care for any censoring or story changes, but what they should care about is the visuals, and let me tell you this is not what Persona 5 is supposed to look like. Just looking at Persona 5 official artwork alone, you can see the vibrant colors, the swag, and style dripping off of the art. Persona 5 has a distinct feel and style to it, and when I look at this anime, I do not see that at all. The colors here are dull compared to the original, and the animation is very stiff considering this is Cloverworks we're talking about. These are the same people that did Darling in the Franxx, Spy Family. This is disappointing coming from such a good studio. Now, while I have my nitpicks and criticisms, it isn't all that bad. The sound department is this show's high point. They were able to get the original cast of voice actors from the game to reprise their roles here, and they all performed quite well, except for Joker because he was a blank slate in the game, so I don't know what I was expecting here. Not to mention they also used the game's original soundtrack, which is just phenomenal both in the context of the game and as standalone music, so it was an absolute joy to hear these songs and voices again, even if it was accompanying the most mid-anime I've seen in a long time. Overall, I didn't hate Persona 5 the animation, but I definitely didn't like it. It's not the worst on this list, so I'll give it a solid C rank. And move on to the next anime on the list. I absolutely adore the Devil May Cry series. During the dreaded pandemic, I finally took a leap into the Devil May Cry games, and what I played was some of the most over-the-top, witty, difficult, and absurd fun I have ever had. A crazy electronic and rock-inspired soundtrack, one of the funniest and downright coolest main protagonists joined by an equally cool side character cast, and some of the most insane action ever seen by these two gumballs with visual receptors lodged just above my nose. Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5 are some of my favorite games of all time, and even while writing this, I want to go back and play. Now, fortunately for fans like me, we are indeed getting an animated Netflix series releasing in April 2025, and it honestly looks pretty promising. Unfortunately for me in the current day, and for many Devil May Cry fans in 2007, they were treated to one of the most trash-ass anime I've ever seen, and I've watched all 12 episodes of Black Bullet in a sitting, so think about that for a second. Studio Madhouse absolutely fucked this one up. It's insane to think the studio that animated Hellsing Ultimate, Death Note, and fucking High School of the Dead, and all of its quote-unquote assets, cooked up this steaming pile of dog shit and shipped it out for the public to see. Devil May Cry as a whole can be a dark and gritty series, but this shit is just dark. Like, where's the color? Tell me, where's the color? The animation here is stiffer than 10-year-old me watching the kiss scene from the first Spider-Man movie. Think about that. Just let that sink in. The action is boring, which is crazy when you're literally adapting a character action hack and slash where the entire selling point of the game is how cool and stylish this is. Shot selection is pretty horrible, and some scenes just look fucking weird, and other scenes have camera shots that linger for what seems like 3 years before cutting to some of the most atrocious character artwork I've ever seen. Why the hell does every character look like they've been mewing for 2 decades? I mean, I was excited for Lady in episode 2, and for a split second, she looked just as hot as I remembered, but then literally a minute or so later, she looked like a JoJo character someone bought off of Temu. Not only is the art style abysmal, but good lord, the sound design is even worse. I don't even know if they were able to track down the original cast, and frankly, I don't care because these performances were god-awful. Every line sounds like it was recorded in a tin can. The line delivery is bland and boring no matter what dub you're watching, and the music doesn't even match the vibe of the game it's adapting most of the time. Except for the intro. That song is still pretty badass. I don't care. I liked it when I was 12. I like it at 27. I don't care. And do not get me started on how they butchered my boy Dante. Dante is supposed to be this funny, witty, and badass main character, but here he's edgy, he's brooding, he's boring as shit. Actually, let me backpedal on blaming Madhouse for this interpretation of Dante, because if I recall correctly, it was Capcom themselves who cooked up this shitty version of Dante when they released the creme de la creme of ass that was Devil May Cry 2. I will never forgive you for that. That Dante was boring and lame as hell, and so was this one. In that regard, I'll give Madhouse points for staying true to the source material, even if it was the wrong one. It sucks because there are moments where the anime actually looks pretty good, and then just moments later it looks horrendous. As a fan of the game series, this one hurt to watch. Hopefully the new series in April will be leagues better than this piece of hot ass, but, you know, we can only wait and see. Devil May Cry 2007 is getting an F rank for me purely for pissing me off. Now I want to play Devil May Cry 5 again and just wash away the sin that was this anime. I need like a drink. One of the most decorated and beloved fighting game series of all time, Tekken has been a staple in video games since the arcade and original PlayStation, releasing Tekken 1, 2, and 3 to huge success and acclaim across the fighting game and gaming community in general. The next logical step for the series would of course be to capitalize on said success and turn a hard-hitting, action-packed fighting game into a battle anime. I mean, the entire shonen battle genre was made for a series like Tekken or Street Fighter to be adapted into. With Tekken's rich lore, outstanding cast of characters, and raw action, it'd be a no-brainer that the series would translate seamlessly into the world of anime. And in 1998, Studio Dean, in cooperation with Sony, released Tekken the Motion Picture, an OVA film that would loosely follow the events of the first Tekken without being canon. Therefore, meaning that the anime could take some creative liberties and tell the story of Kazuya and Heihachi Mishima and all the quote-unquote loving family relationships that the Mishimas develop. Again, I have to say that Tekken seems like a shoo-in for a good anime, a lock for a good shonen battle anime. So the following clips from the film I'm about to show you may induce the same emotions of shock, horror, and downright second-hand embarrassment that I felt when viewing this film, if that's what you want to call it. So without further ado, I present to you the best of Tekken the Motion Picture. God help us all.
You're the one who did it, aren't you, Anna? You killed our father.
You'll pay for that.
That's enough. As long as my brother's alive, then I'm the adopted son with second-rate clout.
You don't know me, and I don't know what you want, but you can't change my mind. Tomorrow, I'm killing my father.
I tried to save you then, but I couldn't. I'd like to save you now, but I can't reach you if you won't let me.
Let you save me? Are you really crying for me?
Will this succeed?
This is precisely the kind of thing genetic therapy ought to be used for.
What is that thing?
What you have seen and heard was the ADV dub, since for some strange reason I can't find a subtitled version of this movie to save my life. And maybe that's for good reason if the dub is anything to use as reference. This movie is fucking awful. The animation is just rough. It reeks of poor 90s anime, and considering it's Studio Dean, yes, that Studio Dean, it doesn't come as a surprise whatsoever. None of the fight scenes have any of the weight and impact that defines Tekken. Yeah, the characters are pretty much all there with some brief cameos from King and Yoshimitsu, but if the characters aren't doing the most batshit crazy fighting moves ever, then what's the point of even having them here? I mean, what was the point of even making this film? It's not like I or many other players play Tekken for the story alone. We play it because it's fun to pull off crazy combos. We play it because there's a crazy cast of characters that all have crazy movesets and just do outright crazy shit. The story, of course, follows Kazuya, and is, let's just say, trials and tribulations of being Heihachi's son, and that's literally all I can remember. I don't really know what this movie's main premise is, other than Kazuya wants to kill his dad, and Jin's sister wants to stop him from doing that because it's bad. Yeah, I mean, killing people is bad. What is this movie? I spent most of my time watching this film distracted by the horrible voice acting as shown to you earlier, the rigid and boring animation, and the fact that they decided to use licensed punk rock music throughout the entire damn movie as the soundtrack. This movie literally ends with Meaning of Life by The Offspring, something I used to listen to in high school every single day. To be fair, the music is the only saving grace for this film, simply because it reminds me of how older anime like, say, Dragon Ball Z used to use licensed rock and metal songs in their anime original movies, and it's because of anime doing that I found bands like Deftones or Pantera and became more of a rock fan than I was when I was a child. This movie is overall one of the worst OVAs I've ever seen, and I can't recommend it to anyone, whether you like Tekken or just like anime in general. It sucks, and Kazuya's eyebrows they're way too fucking big. Dude, these things are thunderbolts sticking out of his head. Like, good God, who drew this? Who animated this? D tier. Absolute D tier. Only saving graces are the music and the punching kangaroo. That's my guy right there. He's just putting in that work. He's grinding harder than me or you could ever. Now, when I say that I saved the best for last, I actually don't mean it in the way that you think. While this was supposed to be a list of the worst video game to anime adaptations, Bayonetta Bloody Fate actually ended up being the most enjoyable of the anime I watched for this video. Released in 2013, just 1 year before the release of Bayonetta 2, Bloody Fate is basically an animated retelling of the entire first game. As someone who has never played any of the Bayonetta games and only know of the series through gaming channels on YouTube, and of course her appearance in the Super Smash Bros. Series, I found this adaptation to be quite entertaining, and I feel it did its job in getting me more interested in the series than I already was previously. It helps a bunch that the show was animated by Studio Gonzo, who worked on the Full Metal Panic series, which is one of my personal favorites, and to be fair, the animation is probably the best it's been all video. It isn't super stellar by any means, but it is completely serviceable, and it doesn't look bad at all. The art style is just very reminiscent of like the Castlevania Netflix series, which makes sense since you can literally feel and see the influence the Castlevania games had on Bayonetta as a whole, just by watching the first few minutes of this film, or probably by playing the first few minutes of the game, to be honest. Now, Bayonetta is a character action game very similar to Devil May Cry, so with pretty decent animation, you'd hope they would be able to nail the action aspect of the game. And while it isn't the most over-the-top and stylish action, it is still okay to look at. Sometimes it's a little hard to follow exactly what's happening on screen, but the action is still fast-paced, energetic, and fun, so the overall feel of the game is still quite intact. Again, I haven't played the games myself, so take this with a grain of salt. In the audio department, this is hands down the best sounding of the 4 anime I covered here. Funimation did the dub, and knowing the quality of work they usually put out, this is a very good dub. They were even able to get basically the entire original cast to play their respective roles, so everything still sounds and feels accurate to what I assume the game should be like. Yuri Lowenthal was the highlight for the cast, as for me, I'm a big fan of his work on Spider-Man, on Naruto, and he does a fantastic job in this film, even though I sometimes feel like I'm listening to Sasuke or Spider-Man, but that's just a small nitpick of mine and nothing against his performance here. The soundtrack here is also quite nice. There's a good mix of gothic orchestral sounds along with some funky tracks that really bring some flair to the action, and if that's what the game sounds like, then I will heavily consider playing this series in the near future. Overall, I was quite pleased by Bayonetta Bloody Fate. I assume it wasn't a perfect adaptation to many of the game's fans, considering it was on many lists for worst adaptations, but I'm still thoroughly impressed by what I watched, and personally I feel it did its job to get more eyes on the games themselves. It's only really a retelling of the first game, so to me this is just a really good introduction for people who aren't really versed in Bayonetta. It was the most complete and cohesive anime on this list, so in all, I will give this a solid B. It wasn't remarkable, but it was still quite decent nonetheless. The combination of anime and video games will always be something I cherish, and I'll always search far and wide for more adaptations to watch because those are 2 of my favorite things in the world combining to make one piece of art. And with the Video Game Awards just behind us, I felt compelled to dive into the world of anime video game adaptations. There is an adaptation that I didn't cover in this video for a multitude of reasons that I feel needs a video all on its own. Not because it's bad or even great or good or because of a review, but because it's one of the first times I was introduced to the anime video game crossover, an anime adapting the characters, story, and universe of one of the most decorated video game franchises in the history of the industry, and one that I and many others hold dear to my heart. A series that is simply legendary.